This is Steve Zing from Mourning Noise, and you're watching CMS TV.
CHRIS Akin Presents, and I, of course, am Chris Akin, and today on the show, I think we're going to talk to the guy that sets the record for a band with the longest hiatus ever. 40 years. 40 years it's been since we last heard from this band, but they are back. New album called Screams Dreams. It's out there. Go listen to it and go buy it. Forget listening to it on Spotify. Buy it somewhere. And here to talk about it from the band Mourning Noise, and I'm sure you know him from a couple of other places as well, Mr. Steve Zing. Steve, how are you, man?
How you doing?
It's good to talk to you, man. And I know I joke about it at the beginning, man, but 40 years away is a hell of a long time. I have a lot of questions there. Specifically, what brings you back to it, and how do you even approach when you have a lifetime in between doing it?
It was one of those things. The band, I dissolved the band in the 80s due to me joining with Glenn Danzig, and we, formed Sam Hain. So at that point, the band was over. We had gotten together like once or twice in the 90s just to screw around, play a show, and led us till a few years ago during COVID. Cleopatra had approached me probably 2018 about reissuing all the old stuff from the 80s that never got to see the light of day.
Sure.
So sat on that for a bit, and then during COVID, we were like, yeah, you know what? Let's do this. So everybody was on board, and they released it, and it kind of, it kind of spurted this new growth and, grew legs. So I got in touch with Chris, our bass player, and Tommy, the guitar player, and I said, hey, why don't we try getting together and playing? So we got together, and, it was a lot of fun. And it was time that we pursued some live shows. Okay. So trying to use the original singer didn't work. So we needed a singer. So we held some auditions, and Robbie came down, and I've known Robbie since he was really young. His dad used to bring him to Danzig shows, and he came to audition. He's the first song he sang, I knew it right there. And by the third song, all of us were like, it's a no-brainer. So we did some shows, and we decided we're going to write some songs. Okay. So we put out an EP, and then Cleopatra's like, well, let's do a full length. And I'm like, perfect, because we have plenty of songs written. And fortunately, I own my own studio, so it wasn't cumbersome or anything like that. And we just did it. And you know what? It's been a great ride, because our expectation was kind of, I don't want to say low, but we were just getting back together just to have fun. Sure. Old friends. And I mean, I've kept in touch with Chris all these years. and Tommy, probably I hadn't talked to him for maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And so it's been great. It's been really great.
Sure. How, when you take that long, and obviously you've been, it's not like you haven't been working. I think you've been in a band or a project or 2 or 3 at any given time this entire time. How difficult is it to go back into something and take the lead of it? Because obviously with Danzig and Sam Hain as well, there's Glenn, who is the guy. How hard was it for you to kind of take lead and creative lead and all that?
Well, Chris, that's a great question and it's because of Glenn that it's easier to take the lead, because watching him all these years, exactly what to do and what to ask for and what not to do. So in that regard, it's much easier. It's also easy when you have other guys in the band that are, especially, Robbie, we're kind of joined at the hip as far as if I need something done, I call Robbie and he's like, okay, get it to you immediately.
Right.
Whether it's artwork or whatever, Robbie finds a way to do it. And the contributions from Chris and Tommy are more on a musical aspect or whatever's really needed. But, for the day-to-day stuff, it's really myself and Robbie. And then, of course, we bounce it off of Chris and Tommy, who will come up with ideas themselves, and it just works, So in that regard, it's much easier to lead something like this all these years later, because you have the experience to do it. If I was if this was 30 years ago, I would probably just throw up my head and said, forget about it. It's too much work.
Right. I hear you. How hard is it with a new singer to keep him in the old style? Because, singer, this, I know this, maybe the audience doesn't. Singers have their own sense of what they should be doing. They always do, no matter what. How hard was it for you to kind of guide the vocal and guide the lyrical process?
So, I think being a lead singer myself in my other band, Black 29, when it comes to like singing and lyrics, I may give Robbie a hint of a title or something like the song Black Cadillac. I had the chorus, Black Cadillac. So I sung that to him and he put it in his phone. And then the next day he had everything else written. But I think it's important as when you're the singer, it's important that you write your own lyrics, because you have to believe what you're singing. Right. And in this regard, we only do a few songs from our past. Right. We'd be lying to ourselves if after 40 years, we didn't become better musicians after all this time and was stuck somewhere in time 40 years ago.
Sure.
That would be hell. So, as far as like material, Tommy, our guitar player, is like, sometimes he doesn't understand. Then he's like, oh, yeah. Oh, now I get it. Now I see where you're going and stuff like that. We try not to be pigeonholed. Right. We're not a horror punk band. We're not a punk rock band. We're not a heavy metal band. We're a rock band. And you know what? If you want to call us metal, hard rock, punk, so be it. But I'd rather the listener judge for themselves and say, I think you're this, or just the fact that I like this.
Right.
What is it? I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny you go there, because I literally wrote that question down, that, this is going to get marketed as the horrorcore goth, thing that you're most known for. But I don't think it's that at all. I think it's just a traditional rock record with some punk elements to it here and there. But I mean, I don't think you have to be a fan of the Misfits or whatever to dig this. I think if you just like rock, you can dig it.
I think what this album represents is what every one of us in this band likes. And, Robbie is a huge all things Danzig, related.
Sure.
He grew up on it, but he also grew up heavily on Queen.
Okay.
I mean, he's endorsed by Brian May Guitars. He's an amazing guitar player as well as singer. And Chris is pretty prolific in everything he likes. Myself, I grew up on 50s, Elvis, obviously Misfits and bands like The Damned and whatnot. And even metal, obviously. And Tommy's into like the old hardcore stuff. So, you get it together, and that's what makes this, to me, like a combustible cocktail. It's like you take these people, whether it's my idea or Robbie's, and by time we all get into it and add our flair to it, it is what it is.
Right on. Well, let's dig into Scream's Dreams and talk a little bit about a few of the songs. Let's start off with, I always try to start with my favorite song on it because it's usually not the one that's the band's. But for me, my favorite tune easily is Sin. I love it. I love the vocal style in it. I love the kind of the undercurrent riff on it. It's just a cool song, man. Tell me a little bit about this one because it's very different from the rest of the record.
When we write songs, we write them right here. This is my control room in my studio here. And, usually, Robbie comes down, the other guys come down. He sits here, right out this throne here with a guitar. Chris has his bass. Tommy puts a guitar on. And I'm sitting here and I'm tapping on my legs. And we'll start with a song. So with that song, it was very interesting because we had the foundation of the song, but it needed something. So we started with the whole part. And actually in the beginning, that whole thing, the intro, there's actually Robbie playing real violin on it.
Okay.
So it was just, Chris, it's kind of, we don't sit down and go, we're going to write a song like this or whatever.
Sure.
It's kind of like whatever's flowing. And to be honest with you, we 90% of the time we write and record the same day.
Okay.
We'll come up with the idea. We'll hash it out in the other room. And right next door, I have my tracking room where the drums are. And we get in there. Everything's wired to go. And it's a matter of hitting the record button. And then we build on top of it. It's like a blank canvas.
Right.
And you put some paint in the middle. And you step back and you start coloring in the lines and trying to figure out, what is this going to be? And to me, from the moment we mixed Sin, I felt it was like one of my own masterpieces that we got to paint together because I just thought it had such movement and a cool vibe that, and what's interesting is, when I look at our Spotify numbers, Sin is one of the most streamed songs, which maybe I guess others felt it too like that.
Sure.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Right. Let me be the devil's advocate because I know you're a producer guy. Recording on the fly like that, I know you listen to it 2 months later and you're like, oh, we should have added this or we should have done that or whatever. No?
I was telling somebody else, there's good and bad about owning your own studio.
Right.
The good is that you can do whatever you want and keep going over and over. The bad thing is that the fact that you can do all that, right? So when you go to a studio and you have to pay for time is money and the money is yours, right? So at some point you have to go, all right, we're done. With the home studio, the only time that there is your own.
Right.
So you could keep going over and over. And at some point, to not stop the spontaneity or get into like the minutia of everything, you have to at some point just go, it's done. Right. Because you could go back and go, oh, if we only did it like this.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to know when to say it's done.
Right.
I know people who sit there and go, yeah, but the little lick at the end of that, I'm like, I don't hear it. But, if you think that you're going to it's going to make or break your career, I don't think that's little lick is going to make or break your career.
Right.
But, look, as artists, there are people that will tend to, they really, especially guitarists, like the noodlers, they will go on until they get that little pinch harmonic thing
Sure.
down or whatever. And I get it, but I do think at some point you just have to, hit the brakes and go, all right.
Right.
Time.
It sounds like you're a little more rocker than artist.
I like to be spontaneous, and I like the freedom of being able to do it. And then we do it, we capture it again, painting that canvas, adding color and things like that. It's the simplification of having the groundwork done, and then you go from there. But a lot of times, without a song, you got nothing. I don't care how many riffs you have. Without a song, without a hook, you got absolutely nothing. So you have the foundation. After you have that foundation, and to me, the simpler the better. Less is more to me in all cases, because I hear lots of bands.
Sure.
And a lot of times is musical masturbation. And why I say that is because sometimes I'm fortunate in both Mourning Noise and Black 29. We're not listening for parts. We're listening for the song, right? Okay. Because you'll get bands going, I can't hear my part. What about my part? And before you know it, it's not about the song. It's about their ego and what they're playing, but they forgot about the song. So in this case, it's not like that. We're listening for the song. If the part doesn't work, I'm going to tell Robbie, Chris, or Tommy doesn't work. And if I'm playing, again, I'm simple 4 on the floor, man. Right. You don't turn on. Most hit songs don't have all this fancy crap going on. Right. Very few. It's about putting it in the pocket, driving it home.
Right. There's a reason Dream Theater has 1 hit, not 20.
I went to a Dream Theater show one time.
Okay.
Mind you, they are all friggin' talented.
Amazing. Oh, yeah.
I have, ADHD supreme. When I'm waiting for the chorus of a song and it just never happens, or if it did, I missed it. But 10 minutes into the song and they're just getting to the lead. And I'm like, what? What's going on? Again, talented musicians, Jordan Roos and Mike Portnoy on drums and stuff. And John Petrucci. I mean, they're the player's player. But sure. I'm just bewildered on how they remember all those parts. Because I'm like, I can't remember some of my own, and they're simplistic. Those guys have to remember tons of changes and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
It is. I'm with you on that, man. Well, dude, let's swing back to Scream's Dreams here. Another one I wanted to ask you about, just because it's I'm going to be honest, it's very rare these days that a title of a song makes me really think and then have to really zero in on the song. The one that really made me think was Frozen Fever. What a creative title, if nothing else. And then it's a cool lyrical tune, and it's a very cool, kind of make the blood pump song. Tell me about that one.
It was interesting. If I look at a lot of our songs, we're a roller coaster ride, right?
Sure.
So I said to Robbie, I said, we have a lot of songs here and here, but we need a song here. I'm like, I want to write a fast song. But of course, we don't just write a fast song. So we have to, we add some parts, we add some flavor, we start the foundation. And I'm like, I just started beating, and then we go from there. And then we built upon it, and that's what came out of it, And again, if you hear, we were playing it last year. We played a bunch of shows with Fear, and we were doing that live. And when you play with a band like Fear, who's ultimately fast.
Oh yeah.
They're one of the creators of like almost, I don't know if you'd even call it American hardcore, but pretty much.
Sure.
And so you're trying to not fit in, because I don't really care about fitting in. That's not my thing. But we like fast songs, and our guitar player Tommy loves that fast hardcore stuff. So we're trying to do something like that, with something like that in mind. Not trying to copy anybody, but that's how that song came about. And of course, I love harmonies, man.
Right.
I mean, I can listen to, bands like the Beach Boys, because you listen to that stuff and you're like, my God, Brian Wilson was ahead of his time. The way they were able to harmonize and stuff, like for that time, they didn't have really it wasn't big multi-tracking back then. There was no Pro Tools and things like that. You had to be spot on. Right. I mean, even you listen to Queen albums, and I was fortunate enough to get my hand. Someone gave me the multi-track of Killer Queen in a Pro Tools file. And again, this is pre-digital age. So, and you listen to those vocals and they're spot on. The intonation everything is so aligned. And you're like, wow. So that's what we try to do. We try to, I have all this gear, and gear is great. It's good for certain things. Other things, I don't rely on, I think what goes in is what should come out. Crap in, crap out.
Right.
So we try to do it right the first time. We don't rely heavily on cut and paste. That's not my thing. We love to sing all the parts. We're not using harmonizers or anything like that. So, and we took that song and we added, really cool, backup vocals to it to kind of bring it out. Otherwise, we would just have another fast song.
Right. No, I agree. It's a great tune. It's really fun.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned touring, and you've obviously played some shows. Now you have the record out, obviously, and you have a record company now behind it. So what are the touring plans? Are you planning to get out there? Do you have time to get out there?
Absolutely. We just signed on with a booking agent.
Okay.
So they are working on that as we speak. We should be able to announce something in the next week of shows. We have a show in Jersey on August 4th. But we just did the No Values Festival out in LA a month ago. And that was amazing. Bands like Misfits and Iggy Pop and Social Distortion, Suicidal Tendencies. You look at Iggy Pop at 78 years old. Fear was on that. Lee Ving is 78 years old.
Right.
But one thing that doesn't change is their energy. Like it's like they still got it. And somebody was talking about being able to do it as you get older, and I'm looking, look, you look at the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Look, Paul McCartney's what, 83?
82, 83, yeah.
82, 83. Ringo Starr just turned 84. This guy doesn't have to play. He doesn't ever have to pick up a fork if he didn't want to. You can have people feed him, but they still have that energy to go, because it's that relationship between yourself and the people in the audience is really the most powerful thing. Whether you're playing to 5 people or 5,000 people, it's that feeling that somebody leaves with, that maybe you inspired them in some way, shape, or form to either want to do it or like your music.
Right.
And that's the best feeling out there.
Right on.
That's why I think they still do it.
Sure. Well, I'm going to ask you the only Danzig question I have. I was determined not to turn this into Danzig Central, because I want to help you promote this record, because it is such a cool record.
Thank you.
But Danzig-wise, and I don't know if it's a Danzig question or a you question, really, but I went back and I looked, and for as long as you've been with Glenn, which is, 20 years, roughly 20 years with Danzig, and another 10, 15 before that, with Sam Hain, you don't record with Danzig. Why haven't you recorded on any of these last 4 or 5 Danzig records?
Well, Glenn has a very interesting way of recording. When
Okay.
Glenn gets the urge to record, I live in New Jersey, Glenn lives in LA. If you listen to most of those albums, most of the tracks are done by Glenn, drums and bass, because when he wants to go in the studio, he just booked studio time. I remember him calling me going, "Are you going to be in LA? I'm going in the studio." No. I mean, so I'm happy to be able to play those live because, Glenn, again, learning from Glenn all these years, and we'll do the same thing here. And we did the same thing with Black 29. We couldn't find anybody for guitar. What did we do? We did it ourselves. What are we going to wait for? There's no time to wait. Time waits for no one. And certainly I'm not going to sit there auditioning people and waiting. With Mourning Noise, we got lucky with Robbie. And again, if there's a guitar part that needs to be done and Tommy's not available, he'll say to Robbie, do it. Perfect. Let's do it. That's the same thing with Danzig. It's like he just wants to get it done and move on. So, he was lucky at the time, Tommy Victor was living in LA.
Right.
And as long as Tommy wasn't on the road, he'd call Tommy and go, "Hey, can you come into the studio?" Otherwise, Glenn would do it.
Okay.
So it's just, it's a thing of Glenn's a busy guy. He just wants to get in, get it done, get it over with, move on.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's probably about time that we move on, but we don't move on before we promote this one more time. Mourning Noise is the band. Screams Dreams is the release. It is out there. You can stream it. You should buy it. Where should people buy it from, man?
Go into your local record storage. You can go to cleopatrarecords.com or, stream us, Spotify, Apple Music, all the streaming platforms.
Yeah, don't do that. Buy it.
But Cleopatra did a great job in doing red vinyl, white, limited edition, I think marble. They even did cassettes.
Nice.
CDs. So they did a great job in putting the package together. So, but yeah, you can get it. A lot of local record stores have it for what's left out there.
Right.
So give them kudos for staying in business and keeping that dream alive for a lot of people that, like myself, who loves to get, an album and even a CD and open that jewel case or open that cover and read the credits and see what it's about. I mean, that was my whole thing. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember buying Kiss albums and it always said Peter Criss plays Pearl drums because he wants the best. And I went out and bought a Pearl drum kit because Peter Criss played Pearl drums and it was in the liner notes. All right. So we had to do that.
Right on. I get it, man. Very cool, man. Well, one more time, it is Mourning Noise. Screams Dreams is the album. Go check it out. And Steve, thanks so much for joining me here on
Chris. Thank you.
The biggest and the best heavy metal radio station is CMS Network Now. With over 5,000 heavy metal songs from all the subgenres and eras of metal, it ranges far more than almost any station broadcasting today. You can also listen to great radio shows like Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop, the shows of the CMS Network, and even the full episodes of the Classic Metal Show with the music. Visit CMS Network now at www.cmsradio.net or on the CMS Network app in both the iOS or Android stores. There's no need to listen anywhere else for the best heavy metal ever created.